Hey, it's Jerry Norton here, and on this video, I want to talk about 17 ways that wholesalers are unethical in the way they operate. Now, some of these ways are intentional, some of them are malicious, and others are unintentional, maybe misinformed, maybe ignorant. And so it's very important that you watch this video and really get your head around how to operate ethically, especially with so much scrutiny on the wholesaling industry right now. Lots of regulation is coming out around this. There's a lot of misinformation about what we do, how we serve distressed sellers. And so this video is to help you raise the bar and operate on a higher level.
For a limited time, you can get a free copy of Jerry Norton's Quickstart Kit with everything you need to flip your first house in 30 days or less. Download it now at myquickstartkit.com.
Now, these 17 ways are in no particular order. I'm going to go through them just as I wrote them out and talk about each one of them. Okay, first one here is not explaining to a seller the due diligence process. Okay, this is unethical to create a due diligence process in your contract via some sort of contingency. Usually it's an inspection contingency and the purpose of that due diligence. So what is the proper way to do that, or what is the due diligence period? Typically in a contract, we're going to have a period of time. Usually we use an inspection contingency, and that's our time to really dig in and see if the deal is viable. It's an opportunity for us to uncover undisclosed information. So for example, if I haven't seen the property yet, due diligence gives me a chance to get into the property and verify everything is as the seller said it was, or as I understood it originally. Maybe there is a formal inspection where you hire a third-party inspector to come in, and he's going to get up in the attic, he's going to get in the crawl space, he's going to check the foundation, and maybe you do that, and during that time, you uncover information. Maybe you don't do a formal inspection, you do your own personal inspection. You go to the property, you check it out, you see for yourself what's going on. Maybe you send cash buyers and they go check out the property and they provide you feedback about information that you don't know. Okay, due diligence is when you're going to investigate further about the property to see if there's something you don't yet know. The improper way to use due diligence, or the way that this is unethical, is you don't clearly explain that to a seller. So here's what this would look like. You'd say, hey, Mr. Seller, we agree on price. We're agreeing that I'm going to follow these specific terms. My understanding is that your property is in a certain level of condition. I totally understand that I'm going to come in and probably do renovations. But I need a window of time where we can really dig in and make sure everything pencils. And Mr. Seller, if during this 5-day, 7-day, 10-day window that we agree on, if during this due diligence period, if something comes to my attention about this property that I don't know right now, new information that makes this deal not feasible, I'm going to let you know during that period. And if that happens, and for some reason something's uncovered that I don't know right now, then I'm going to come back to you and we're going to have a conversation about this. Typically what that might look like is it might look like we need to change something, maybe a reduction in price. Maybe if that doesn't work for you, this isn't a good deal and we need to terminate the contract. That could be an option too. If I find out that it needs a new roof and you said it didn't, or if I find out it's got a foundation issue and I didn't know that, or if there's something that happens that I don't know right now, during that due diligence period is when I'm going to bring that to your attention. That's what that's for, and that's what's going to happen. Now, what did I do? I just disclosed to that seller what happens during that period of time. And then I say to the seller, look, after that due diligence period is up, my earnest money becomes hard. That means, Mr. Seller, if I don't perform on the contract, I forfeit the earnest money. You get to keep it. That's your security. That's your peace of mind. But until that due diligence period is up, that earnest money is non-refundable, and we have that time to do our due diligence. Does that make sense, Mr. Seller? Okay, so you're explaining that. That's ethical. Okay, that's honest. That's transparency. That's important to do. Okay, and likewise, I kind of touched on this a little bit in the first one. The second way to be unethical is to create what we call weasel clauses. Weasel clauses. Now, a weasel clause is simply a way out of the contract that suits you, that serves you. A weasel clause, another way to say this, is one-sided. Okay, so this would be a one-sided contract. That's unethical to have a one-sided contract. One-sided contract means it's all in your favor and none in the seller's favor. If your contract went before a judge or a court and they were to look at this and say, okay, Was this a fair and equitable contract, right? Did this have protections for the seller, protections for the buyer? Does this seem fair to everybody, to all parties involved? If it doesn't seem fair to all parties involved, then you're creating a one-sided contract that's unethical. So what are some ways that it's one-sided? Here's the number one way that wholesalers create one-sided contracts. They have in their contract that the seller cannot cancel the contract for any reason whatsoever, but the buyer, wholesaler, has all the way up until closing to cancel the contract for any reason they want. That's one-sided. Seller can't back out for any reason. Wholesaler can back out for whatever reason they want. That doesn't feel right, does it? If you were on the other side of that, if you were the seller, that wouldn't feel fair to you. If that was your grandma in that situation and someone was treating her that way, you would advise her, hey, that's not a fair contract, don't do that. So you need to be fair. It can't be one-sided. They call this mutuality of contract. It has to be fair on all sides. Now, can you have in your contract that there's a due diligence period? Yes. You have the right to a due diligence period. You have the right to an inspection, right? But it has to be fair. How long does it take to do an inspection? In my opinion, and a lot of legal counsel says you should be able to get that all done in 10 days or less. So if you have a 30-day close and you have a 30-day contingency, it better make sense. Why do you need 30 days? Are you doing some kind of zoning or rezoning? You need to go down to the city. And I mean, if there's a legitimate reason why, okay. But if you just need to find out if the condition is what you think it is, that doesn't take more than a few days. Make it fair and reasonable. That's the ethical way to operate. Okay, number 3 is to intentionally overcontract with sellers. Now, this definitely is in the shady side because there's intention here. The purpose is to mislead, deceive, and cheat a seller. Now, what do I mean by intentionally overcontract? Intentionally overcontract means that the seller says, I want $200,000, and you say, no problem, I'll pay $200,000. Let's agree to it. You sign a contract for $200,000, and you know that $200,000 is not a deal. You know it's not a deal, but you sign anyway. You get the seller all locked in and committed. Then you string them along, and then when the U-Haul's in the driveway and it's the day of closing, you go to the seller and you say, hey, you know what? 200 don't work. And the seller's like, well, packed up, we're ready to go. I got my lease on the apartment starts today. And you say, yeah, well, sorry, 200 doesn't work, but we can still close today if we just lower the price down to 150. Okay, so it's intentional. You're over-contracting on purpose. Super shady, super unethical. I hope I don't have to explain this a whole lot, but this is something that's happening in our industry. Now, if you're on the unintentional, misinformed side of things, then this won't apply to you. But the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is because you and I need to police our industry. Wholesaling is our industry. And these people that are out there acting like this, we need to call them out when we see this, because what you're doing is wrong. It's wrong to sellers. It's creating a lot of bad will in our industry on us, on you and I who are trying to do things the right way. It's hurting everybody else. The 1% that operate this way are ruining it for the other 99%. And you and I have an obligation to call this crap out. Okay. So if you see that going on, then you need to step up and say something and do something about it. Number 4 here is to give sellers financial or legal advice. This would be instructing a seller to stop making payments. It would be telling them to go ahead and sign the contract without talking to a spouse, file bankruptcy. You have no place to do that. Stay completely away from that. Don't tell sellers you're a foreclosure specialist or any of this crap. That's not true. You're not a foreclosure specialist. You're a wholesaler trying to buy a discounted property, right? So be very careful that you're not giving financial or legal advice. Okay, number 5 is to misrepresent value or condition to a seller. This would be telling a seller your property is only worth X, or it's going to take $100,000 to fix your house up, or you intentionally say, hey, your house is only worth $100,000 when really it's worth $150,000, right? When you cross into the area of telling sellers value or condition that's not right or not accurate, and you're doing that with intention, you're doing that so that you can convince the seller to sell you their deal, that gets into the unethical realm of things, right? That's why they're passing laws right now and regulations saying that the seller has the right to get an appraisal and you pay for it. Buyer, that's Washington State. Why are they doing that? Because they're feeling like sellers are being lied and deceived and misled on the value and condition of their property. What would be an ethical way to handle that? So you'd say to a seller, look, Zillow's showing your property at 200,000. And I'm sure you could get every bit of 200,000 if you did certain things. You might need to put some money into the house to get it to a certain condition that would get 200,000. You might need to hire a real estate agent who's going to find you a retail buyer that will pay 200,000. I'm an investor. And for me as an investor, what I do is I solve problems by providing speed and convenience with cash. So I can buy it as is. I won't ask you to do anything. You won't have to pay commissions. You won't have to pay closing fees. We can close in a couple of weeks. I can give you that speed and convenience, but I need to buy at a discount. So I'm not buying at value. I'm buying at a discount. Okay. And you're clear about that. So you're not misrepresenting that, hey, I need to pay 150,000 because your house is worth 150,000. That's misrepresenting value. Okay, that's not an ethical way to operate with sellers. So number 5 is with sellers, and number 6 is the same thing with buyers. So the way this looks, which is very common in our industry, is wholesalers inflate ARV and they downplay condition repairs. So they'll say to sellers, they'll market out their deal and they'll say, hey, ARV is 450,000 and the repairs are 25,000. When in reality, ARV is 375 and repairs are 75, right? Nothing hurts our industry more with buyers than a bunch of wholesalers inflating ARV and downplaying repairs. I read a post today on Facebook where a cash buyer said, wholesalers, you guys drive me crazy. There's ignorance here on your part or arrogance on your part. Don't bring me deals where you're lying about ARV and repairs. But most cash buyers know what they're doing. They're going to comp it themselves. They're going to look at condition, and you're wasting everybody's time. Stop trying to trick somebody into your deal and be honest, be fair. Say, you know what? Here's what I think the value is, and here's the comps that I'm looking at. And I'm using accurate comps, fair comps, reasonable comps. And the condition, I'm not trying to make it sound like it needs a whole lot less than it actually does. Okay, so you're not pushing these bad numbers on your buyers. That's unethical. Don't do that. Okay, number 7 is to not disclose known issues. Now, this would be to your cash buyers. So if you buy a property or you contract a property and it's brought to your attention, you know that there's an issue with the property, and then you don't disclose that issue to your cash buyer. That's unethical. So I'll give you an example. I've got a deal right now that I actually purchased this property. I'm not doing an assignment. I'm doing a takedown. So I bought it and reselling it. Well, when I bought it, it's a Detroit property, old home. I've done so many deals in Detroit that I instantly know that there might be a foundation issue. Now, at the time of looking at the deal, I didn't know, but I knew I needed to know. So what did I do? I got my basement specialist that I work with dozens of times to go out to the property. He came back and said, yes, you've got a basement issue, but I can fix this. Here's my quote for the repairs. What should I do? What's the right thing for me to do now when I go to resell this property? Well, to disclose the foundation issues. I know about them now. I'm aware of them. They're brought to my attention. And so now what I've done is write in my description, I say, known foundation issue, quote provided for the repair. And so I bring to my buyer's attention, hey, there's a foundation issue here. Here's a quote from my guy of what it's going to take to fix it. I'm letting you know so that you can make an informed decision. Anytime I know something and I'm withholding it from somebody, that prevents them from making an intelligent decision. Just like when we don't disclose things to sellers. The issue there is that the seller needs to know everything that's going on so that they can make an informed decision about what they want to do. Okay, that's why disclosure is so important. So not disclosing known issues, unethical, don't do that. Number 8 is to file a memo. We call this an affidavit, a memorandum. This clouds title. What wholesalers will do to protect their interest is once they contract and they have a legally binding contract, is they'll have title file a memorandum. This puts notice that there is a contract in place and it clouds title. It prevents a seller or a buyer from backdooring you, going around you and closing the deal outside of you. It used to be a very common way to protect ourselves from that happening, from getting backdoored. But unfortunately, some wholesalers have found a way to be completely unethical and scam sellers. So here's what they do. They file a memo, then they ghost the seller. They go dark. They have no intention of buying the property or wholesaling the property. Then a month, 2 months, 6 months later, seller finds a new buyer. They try to close. Title can't close the property because you filed a memo. Then the real buyer calls up scammy wholesaler and says, hey, what's going on here? You got this memo here. We need you to release this. And then the wholesaler holds hostage the transaction. They hold the seller hostage. They say, hey, I'm happy to remove my memo. Pay me $10,000 and I'll remove it. Completely dishonest. This is on that whole scam side of like what not to do. Pretty soon, we won't be allowed to do these. North Carolina has a bill that might pass. It's already passed, I think, the House, waiting for the Senate, that says no more memos. You can't file them anymore. And I think I'm following 5 or 6 states right now that have bills in place that if passed into law, this won't be allowed anymore. Why? Because of the few people that do this the wrong way and ruin it for everybody else. So don't file memos and then hold everybody hostage with your memo. Number 9 is to not disclose to sellers that you may assign the contract. Now, this is a big one. If you think about it, what you do with your contract is your business. You have a legal interest in that property via your contract. You should be able to do whatever the hell you want. If you want to buy it, buy it. If you want to assign it, assign it. But this has come under a lot of scrutiny lately. And the reason why is because sellers have the right to know that you may sell your contract. They have the right to know that. That's their right to know. A lot of laws are coming out around this. There's a lot of scrutiny around this. You need to say to sellers, I may assign this contract. If that's your only intention, that's the only thing you have, that's the only play in your playbook is to assign it, you have no means of buying it, then you need to say that too. So like for me, I buy a lot of property and I flip it, I buy property and keep it, and I assign. I do all of the things. So I can say to a seller, hey, I'm not quite sure right now what I'm going to do. We may buy it and fix it up and sell it. We may keep it in our portfolio. I may pass it off to one of my other investors. That's called an assignment. I may do that too. I can say that. Now, if you're new to this and you have no means of doing anything other than the assignment, then you need to disclose that. You need to say to a seller, look, I work with a lot of investors in this market. And what I'm going to do is once we agree on price, I'm going to take this deal to my group of investors. And I'm going to find one of them that's going to want this deal that has the cash to perform. And then they're going to pay me a fee and I'm going to move the deal over to them and they're going to step in and close. That's my intent. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm letting you know, Mr. Seller, that that's what's going to happen here. You have to be able to say that. You cannot say to a seller, I'm the buyer, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it. When you have no history of that, that's what intent means. Intent means you've done it before, or the means to do it. You have financing to back you to where you could do it and you could show that financing. That's what it means to say, I'm a buyer, I'm going to buy it for all cash. But if you can't, then you have to explain and disclose, I'm going to assign this contract. That's how that has to work in 2025 and beyond. Okay, number 10 is daisy chain without permission. So what is a daisy chain? You're a wholesaler, you contract a deal, and then you put your deal out to the market. And you put it on Facebook groups, you put it on Investor Lift, Investor Base, whatever, you put it out there. And then other wholesalers, they see your deal. And then what they do is they grab that information, respin it, and then they market it out on all the public places or to their private list as a deal for sale. And they did not ask you if they could do that. They just took your deal and added another fee on top of it. Their hope is that they can find a buyer, they can come back to you and say, hey, that price you want of $175, I can pay that, because they went and found somebody at $185 and they're looking to JV. Nothing wrong with JVing on deals. Daisy chaining without permission, though, is unethical. You did not get permission from that wholesaler to try to resell their deal. If you're going to do that, get permission. Then it's okay. Okay, number 11 is in the same realm of that last one. It's pretty similar. This is to pretend to be a buyer. Pretending to be a buyer would look like this. I'm a wholesaler. I get a deal under contract. I put my deal on a Facebook group. And then another wholesaler calls me up and says, hey, Jerry, I'm a cash buyer and I'm interested in your deal. But I need to get in there with my partner. It's usually my partner. I need to get in there with my partner. And can we lock this down? And they're pretending to be a buyer when all they're trying to do is then go find a buyer, bring an actual buyer, and then they get back to you in a couple of days and they say, hey, so, I'm actually not really the buyer, my partner is, or, hey, now I'm going to tell you I'm a wholesaler, but I have a buyer and they're interested, and can we JV? But from the onset, they weren't honest about what they were doing or who they were. Okay, so that's unethical. The way to do that ethically would be to call up Jerry and say, hey, I'm a wholesaler just like you. I might have a buyer that's interested. Can I show my buyer? Are you open to JV? Can I do this informally with your permission, or should we do it formally where we have a written JV agreement? That's how that conversation should go. Okay, number 12 is a pet peeve of mine. This is to ghost sellers. Now, what this would look like is we contract a deal, let's say at $150,000. We have our contract in place. And then I go and I do my thing, I do my marketing, and oh crap, I overcontracted. Buyers don't want to pay my wholesale fee and nobody wants my deal. And so I'm sort of embarrassed about this. I feel kind of stupid. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go dark on this whole thing. I'm not going to call the seller. The seller's calling me. I'm ignoring them. I just go dark and I ghost the seller. Seller's over there wondering what the hell's going on. I contracted with this guy. He's not answering my phone. He's sitting around waiting, doesn't know what to do. Finally, he moves on and finds somebody else. But it's unethical to put the seller in that situation. Man up, own your choice. You overcontracted. It's okay. We've all done it. It's no big deal. Call the seller and say, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry. I messed up. I can't pay $150. I thought that was a good deal. Sorry for wasting your time. I have found out that I could still make this work, but we need to be at $140. I don't know if that's okay with you. If you want to, restructure our contract and still close, but I can't do $150, and let's sign an official termination of contract so that you can move on with your life. That would be the right thing to do. Okay, so don't ghost sellers. Not cool. Okay, number 13 is to not disclose that you have a real estate license. So this would only apply to you if you have a real estate license. But this is going to become more and more of an issue because more and more states are requiring that you have a real estate license in order to wholesale. So we're going to see a lot more wholesalers get licensed, but then we're also going to see a lot more wholesalers not use their license properly. And so one of the biggest things with being licensed, and I've been licensed for 20 years, one of the biggest things with being licensed is disclosure. Like that's the number one thing they hammer down on you. So what does this look like? If you hold an active real estate license in that state and you're transacting, you have to disclose to sellers that you hold an active real estate license. And when you're selling, you have to disclose to buyers, hey, seller, me, I have an active real estate license. Disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. Always tell everybody. They have the right to know that you're licensed. You need to explain that. You need to say to a seller, hey, just so you know, I have an active real estate license. I'm not representing you as a real estate agent and looking out for your best interest. That's not what I'm doing here. Even though I have a license, my role in this is the buyer. I'm being a buyer in the transaction, and my intent is to do what's in my best interest, get a good deal for me that I can make a profit on, not get you the highest price the market will pay. Even though I'm licensed, I'm not representing you as an agent. You have to have that conversation. You have to clearly define who you are because a license holds you to certain levels of accountability. And so if you're acting as a licensed agent in the transaction, the seller needs to know that. And if you're not, they need to know that as well. Very clearly disclose licensure. And by the way, in my contracts that I give away for free, go to wholesalecontracts.com. I think that's the URL. I'll put it right here on the screen if I'm wrong with that. But I have right on there a clause that says buyer is, check the box, not licensed and representing myself, or I am licensed, but I'm still representing myself. I don't care if you're licensed or not. I want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding with sellers, that in no way, shape, or form am I acting as a real estate agent. Okay, so it's important. That's number 13. Okay, number 14 is to not follow regulation in your state. You have a responsibility to learn what the laws are in your state. Now, I do my very best to keep the entire industry updated. You can go to wholesaleregulations.com, and I work very, very hard at following all these different regulations. I put out videos. I have a playlist on all the different states. I'm following several right now. As they come out, I deep dive, I do my homework, I investigate, I find out like how these laws work, how they apply, what you can and can't do, my opinions on it all. And so whatever state you're in, you need to learn what you can and can't do. Maybe you need to have a licensing. Maybe you have to have certain types of disclosure. I can't tell you how many wholesalers I see in South Carolina and other states that have regulation, and they have this catch me if you can attitude. Like, well, I'm going to do whatever I want. And, oh, they're not enforcing it in Illinois. Illinois passed regulation 5 years ago, but you know what? If they're not enforcing it, then I'm just going to do it anyway. Well, that's unethical because you know there's laws around it. If you disagree with the laws, follow the proper channels to fight the laws. You have that right. But just because you disagree with it doesn't mean you don't have to follow it. It's like robbing a bank and it's okay if I don't get caught. No, you can't rob the bank. It's wrong whether you get caught or not. Not following regulation is wrong whether you agree with it or not. So do the right thing and make sure you're following the regulation in your state. Okay, number 15 is improper fee structure. This would be getting paid in a transaction outside of an assignment. This is what they call unlicensed commission. An unlicensed commission is violating brokering law. Brokering law says that if you get paid in a transaction to assist a buyer or a seller in a real estate transaction, that's brokering and you need to be licensed in order to get paid. Okay, so improper fee would be you get paid on the side, your buyer pays you a fee, you call it consulting, and it's not an assignment. The assignment is legal, well, wherever it's still legal. You have equitable interest is what we call that. And you're selling that and getting paid for that. You're able to do that because the assignment is assigning your equitable interest in a contract. Just getting paid a check at closing one way or another is violating brokering. That's an improper fee structure, and that's unethical. It's dishonest and it's against the law. So you have to follow the right fee structure. Okay, so be very careful about that one. Okay, number 16 is to market your deal incorrectly. And this one should be a given. I still see this happen quite a bit. But if you contract a property and then you're now going to dispo your deal, you cannot say, I have a property for sale. No, you don't. You have a contract for sale. And this is a big one that they're really cracking down on. This has been how it's supposed to be all along. The proper way to do an assignment is you're selling your contractual rights. You're not selling a property. Remember, you don't own the property. All you have is equitable interest with your contract. So you have to be very clear in your marketing that I'm marketing a contract for sale, not a property for sale. And the last one here is not putting down substantial earnest money. Now, this is controversial. There are people that completely disagree with me on this one, but here's my position on it, and this is the stance I'm taking, is if you put down zero earnest money or $10 earnest money, probably even $100 earnest money, that's not substantial enough to validate your contract. What is earnest money for? What is the design and purpose of earnest money? It's to give the seller assurance that you're legit, that you actually are a real buyer. Now, I've talked to Jeff Watson. He's a nationally recognized attorney out of Ohio. And he told me is earnest money to be substantial should be $500 as a minimum standard earnest money. Now, I use it as a way to leverage my position in the deal, meaning I offer a lot more earnest money often to make my deal even stronger. So I leverage earnest money. But if you're putting down $0 or $10 earnest money, then you're not committed. But when you have some skin in the game, you step up to the plate. You're more serious, you're more honest, you're more, you're going to do the work to get the deal done, or you're not going to contract it. So all these wholesalers running around with zero earnest money, I think my opinion only on this one. All the other ones I'm pretty certain on. This one's just my opinion. You can disagree with it. That's fine. But I think if you're putting down $0 or $10 earnest money, that's unethical. It's not substantiating your contract. That's my opinion on that. Okay. Now, guys, I'd love your opinion. If there's something here I missed out of these 17 different ways to be unethical, again, I know that some of this is ignorance. Some of this is just misinformation. Some of this isn't necessarily that you're intentionally trying to be malicious. Some of it is. Some of this is really malicious and really shady and totally scammy. But some of it isn't. And I want you to be able to recognize these things. I want you to be able to look at these and say, okay, here's a gray area. I want to stay away from the gray area. I don't want to be on the edge of things. I want to be performing totally on the up and up. That's what I hope that this does for you. If there's any of this that you're confused about, maybe you've been trained incorrectly. It could even be something I said years ago that now we do differently. You need to be aware of what's going on. More than ever today, we need to stay out of the gray and operate way on the other side. Over disclose. Like you can't disclose enough. Over disclose. Be extra careful about what you do, what you say, how you operate. Be the voice of reckon. Be the force for good. Be the beacon on the hill. Let your light shine in this industry. Let everybody look around and say, man, if it wasn't for these wholesalers, the market wouldn't be what it is today. I want buyers to be like, I love wholesalers. They bring me great deals. I want agents to say, I love working with wholesalers. They're awesome to work with. They get my deals moved. I want sellers to be like, man, I love working with you because you solved my problem. Be the solution that we're supposed to be, that we should be, that we ought to be. Be that solution in the marketplace. Now, what I want you to do next is I did a video where I talk about how I've created really clear disclosures that are in all of my contracts and how you should be doing these. Many of these we talked about today, but these are disclosures that will keep you safe, and it will allow you to make sure that every time you do deals with sellers, that you're having this conversation with them and making sure they're fully disclosed and aware of what you're doing. Now, I want you to watch that video, and in that video, I'm going to show you how you can download my disclosures. I pay thousands of dollars for attorneys to create these. I update them regularly. I'll show you how to download those for free in that video. So watch that now, and I'll see you on the next video.